We almost always have filmmakers here. Tonight we have two of the creative producers. They'll be here after the show for a Q&A. Sebastian, Pardo, and Riel Roch-Decter. I got it. Decter. I gotta remember that. So that'll be about 9 o'clock when the film is done. I do want to give you a heads up that there rat hunting and capturing is part of the film, so there are images of dead rats. So just wanted to give you a heads up of that. And so just so you know. And with that, well, hopefully some of the people will keep trickling in while dealing with parking. But enjoy the film. Thank you all for coming. We'll see you after for a Q&A. Thank you very much. Thank you all for sticking around, and please join me in welcoming the producers of the film, Sebastian, Pardo, and I still didn't ever learn how to pronounce your name correctly, Riel Roch-Decter.
You're behind.
Hang out in the middle and lean on it. So I thought I'd start with a few and then see what more everybody else might have.
Great.
Usually the starting one is just how did it start? How did you each come involved with it, and what was Theo come to it as well?
Do you want to do how we came to it, and I'll do how Theo, or vice versa?
How we came to it?
Yeah.
Like us together?
Or individually?
Oh, as a company or as like for the
Yes.
film
Well, was
specifically?
Theo? So how did Theo start working on this film?
do Theo,
And then
I guess.
at what point did you two become involved?
So the story goes, as Theo tells it, that one night he came home, and he discovered that rat, that first image in the film of the rat jumping up out of the trash can. And he realized what a powerful kind of message it was, and it kind of started him thinking about, like, well, why can't this rat jump out of it? And he says that, like, the rest of the film is really encoded in that message, in that image. And so he started reaching out to, like, the city of Baltimore actually has government rat control. It's not like a private business. So I think originally he just thought it was a short, and he started following around different pest control people. And as he kind of got deeper in the wormhole, he realized, oh wow, John Hopkins has, you know, this history of creating the rat poison, and from there it kind of like all these things kept connecting in Baltimore, be it the maps or
You'd also like sign up to like pet meetup groups.
yeah.
And then like go and meet them, and so he met like rat lovers as well as
Right.
people who killed them.
And so yeah, I think he just from there kept growing out the movie. And when we first saw it, I remember saying it's like spending it, you know, an hour and a half on the internet. It was like having a bunch of different tabs open, and you're going through all these different kind of tangents that evoke connections in your mind, and that's kind of what the film is, and it's an expression of that in a way.
And yeah, and the way that we came to meet him, we had another film called Ma by Celia Rolson Hall that was playing in Rotterdam, and Celia and him were both like 25 filmmakers to watch, and so they knew each other, and he was there with a short film, and we just kind of connected there, and he really liked the films that we were producing, and he said, I have 2 films I want to pitch you. And we sort of hung out with him for a couple days, and he's like, all right, I'm going to pitch you. And he pitched this one film about like a teen bodybuilder that he'd been following for a few years. And he really went into detail on that. And then he was like, and I have this other movie. It's about rats, but not really about rats. And we're like, tell us more about that.
Yeah.
And then
The way he was struggling with it,
yeah, got us
explaining
excited.
it was like really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he sent us a rough cut of it, because again, he'd just been shooting it. I think when he started, he thought it was a short film that just kept getting longer and longer and longer. And he sent us like it was like a 2-hour cut. And then we, you know, I think that phone call that we had, the same phone call where we're like, it's kind of like going on the internet. I was like, well, different producers would tell you to cut all these different things out and just make it about this, and we're not the ones to do that. So if you want to kind of ride with us, it's gonna maybe be a little harder, but I think he got that. And then the first place that we submitted was Locarno, and they invited the film, and it was just kind of like this journey from there.
Yeah. It was a bit of a mad dash. I mean, it's a little bit of a different system in Europe where like your movies are kind of done and the festival's the launching spot, but they told us with like
they give us like
3 weeks or
notice,
something, and so we had to do sound and color.
Yeah, we flew to Baltimore and just did everything in like 2 weeks, and like basically flew to Italy with DCP.
with the DCP, yeah.
So, I mean, that's of course why the film is interesting to me, and I think for FIlmforum is because of the rush coloring job for Locarno. No, it's our way of challenging the Locarno and Los Angeles Festival.
Oh, yeah.
But it's the idea of coming around like a set of themes that you're not always hitting directly, but that through this fractured storytelling, you're working around. So, like, you could say it is a film about the social history of Baltimore, but it's also not. That.
It's also about
filmmaking
in a lot of ways, and I think that's what is a big interest to Theo, is that he's not necessarily giving you the answers or telling you how to think. He's allowing you to draw those connections between the subject matter in the same way that you would on the internet. There's no right way to read those tabs necessarily, and I think he wants that the same way that like the top-down creation of the maps is problematic. I think he thinks that a director behaving that way is problematic too, and so that seems to be a theme he comes back to often.
In the end, sort of kind of offering up a fake catharsis, sort of pointing at all these documentaries that kind of do that.
They have like call to actions, and
they try and make you, even though you just watched a whole film about an endangered leopard or something, at the end it kind of makes you warm and fuzzy, like we can save him together. And so the film kind of attempts to kind of poke holes in that.
And fictional,
There are a couple of there are a lot of sections which involve either the rats or the socioeconomic history. A couple are looser or more loosely connected, but raise other connotations. And I wanted to talk about those. One is the race car. I mean, which is obviously a really important message given its placement in the film, but obviously doesn't involve either rats directly or the history of Baltimore inherently. The other is the Forensic History Museum, with done by a wealthy woman, but again, no obvious linkages.
I think those both hang on the skeleton of like the problems in filmmaking, or at least address filmmaking in some way.
Or the process.
The process, like
for Theo specifically.
Yeah, I would say the car is like, literally it starts with a bang. There's this spectacle. There's a beginning. There's an end. There's this kind of expectation. There's this social construct where you all line up and you watch it. And I think he's making you aware of that at the beginning, that we're now all watching this race car kick off and the world began. And then I think for I'm giving you answers, which is what he probably wouldn't want. But
but these are his answers.
These are ways that he's thinking about it, at least.
And he's talking about
and then in the models, it's a similar power that the filmmaker has, right? She says there's her answers, but those are secret. And I think in a lot of ways he's asking the audience to do the same thing with this film, and by making that part of the text of the film, he's trying to be very, I guess, delicate with like how the material's being handled, and that he has his answers, but that it's ultimately up to you.
I think it's the tale of the redlining maps is of course vital. Now there's a couple books out, and people are really beginning to comprehend how those government guidelines actually created these inner city slums in the United States over decades. And I mean, that come forward in the so actually there have been a couple now different map documentaries and things that have incorporated that. Was that a revelation for the two of you when you first saw the film, and also in Theo and his discovery of that? And
yeah, I mean, we hadn't been to Baltimore, or we had been with the festival.
We went for the festival when we saw the first or second cut, right?
Well, those existed in like every city as well, not just Baltimore.
Yeah. I think he had done quite a bit of work with the visualization on the map, so it wasn't like something that we had to discover necessarily. Like a lot of the visualization was done, and we thought that was such a powerful part of the film. I don't quite know. I mean, we definitely built, I think, knowing that those are really important parts, and we're building up to it, I think was an important part in shaping the overall narrative. But beyond that, I don't really know. It's powerful stuff. I mean, there was
Yeah, no, I
Who was
mean,
it? Can't
I think
remember
the
what it was
first
like.
time I watched, I never thought like maps could like make me almost cry. You know
Right.
what I mean? And going to Baltimore and finishing the film there and having gone back a few times, like you really feel it in that city
Yeah.
more than anywhere else that I've been to in America, where literally once, you know, you're walking down one street and you turn the corner and it's completely different. And I think a lot of what Theo was exploring was like, why is it
Yeah.
this way? And why is this rat
Stuck in the
this
trash
can?
can.
And like, why can't things seem to get better? And why are they so much better right here, but not over here? And it was really great too, actually, in Baltimore. We screened the film there numerous times. It played like theatrically for like a month, and a few of the screenings we bring out the rub out team, they're called, like the exterminators. And people would ask them questions like, you know, is it worse in this neighborhood or that neighborhood? And he's like, rats don't care where you live, you know, like how clean or not, you know. And so there was that sort of like rats are everywhere kind of thing, but at the same time, yes, certain areas are worse than others, and it's just like very complicated in that city specifically. You really feel it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, yeah, I don't know, it's not as, like, LA is a very segregated city in those ways.
Yeah.
You know, you drive to Beverly Hills, like a different city, or Santa Monica, and I think in
Well,
Baltimore.
those are literally different.
I mean,
cities.
they're totally different cities. But in Baltimore, yeah, it is. It's really dense. Unemployment is super high. It really does feel like it's at the frontier of whatever's going on in America, and its problems are like really, you feel them there in a way. Like, listen to the radio, it's all about like, we got a hot tip on a new job, and like, sign up here. Like, people are selling water on the side of the street, and just like really, yeah, I don't know. I'm just rambling now, but.
Well, first, at this point, let's see, any questions from any of you about any aspects of the film in the back there, please?
I mean, I know it was pretty strong, metaphorical kind of movie, you know, suggesting so many things. But there's one thing that I observed, that the music kind of keeps the whole edit like a glue. It's like some kind of background that's like really assisting in, you know, fueling the narrative forward. There's something how that happened,
Yeah.
and who.
That's actually great that you asked that question, because it is a really unique aspect of the film, and I don't think it works this way in a lot of films, where literally Theo would make an edit, give it to Dan Deacon, the composer, who would write new stuff, who Theo would change the edit for, and then he'd move the song to a different place. So they had this kind of call and response kind of way that they were working, that I think really imbues the film with like a level of integration of those two elements that is like really special.
Yeah, I mean, typically you lock picture and then you take it to a
Yeah.
composer and you're like, or maybe he's written some things,
Yeah.
or she's written some things, and you put them in the film and you kind of test them out. But
Yeah.
really the way that they went about it was they were editing it together with the
Yeah.
music and the edit. So that's kind of why it
Yeah.
comes out so strongly. And also the click thing, I mean, I
Oh,
should
yeah.
mention that. In the beginning, there's a bit of a click and that's actually, I guess a friend of Theo's had done an experiment where they had recorded a rat's brain and turned it into like MIDI
It's
forms.
a rat going through a maze.
Oh, right, so the clicks are
So
like the
it's
brain
in making a
waves.
decision.
Yeah, and the decision making. And so he had originally laid that out through the entire film, and that's how he made a lot of his editing decisions. And he kept a little bit of that in there.
Yeah.
So
There's
that,
also
yeah, that was
there's
good.
also that I don't know how clearly it comes across, but you see the rat in the triangle theremin,
Mhm.
and they had done a kind of installation of that in Baltimore, and I think some of the scores derived from that as well.
Yeah, the rat's like sort of walking
Yeah.
around that and making sounds, and then him
It
using
changes
that
the pitch,
data
yeah.
and then composing
Yeah.
with that. So the rat's kind of
And I think-
part of the score.
We did a little doc about the score too, if you want to check it out. We might be misrepresenting some of it, but I think the other thing they did is they took the brain waves and he put it in the player piano.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Dan Deacon had this player piano that he can feed in MIDI data, and he took a lot of those brainwave things and put it in there. So that's what some of that piano is doing.
Who was the person who was doing the theremin, the mouse theremin?
Dan Deacon and Theo collaborated on that installation.
So that's
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Theo's actually the one with on the ladder, like
Yeah.
putting the rat in the
In the
theremin.
overalls, yeah.
They're rats he borrowed from Eagle Warrior.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the guy who plays
The
the
flute
flute
guy, yeah.
is like a big rat fan. And so Theo borrowed rats from him for the experiment.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, I live in Sherman Oaks, and rats are, I mean, basically, they're pandemic all over Beverly Hills, wherever it is. They're usually like wood rats or tree rats, not necessarily the big nori rats you'll find in slum situations. But periodically, you know, there'd be like an infestation in my yard, or they get into the house, and vector control used to give you the poison, and that would take care of it. And apparently 2 or 3 years ago, either PETA or maybe the pest control lobbied, and they made it illegal to sell or provide the high potency poison that actually affects the rats, because they said, well, occasionally pets or children might get sick from this stuff. So basically, what they've created is an infestation, and the population's going to just skyrocket because there's no way for the civilian to handle the population. But my question has to do is, has PETA seen this film? I mean, have you gotten flack because, my God, they showed a snake eating a pinky?
Yeah. Surprisingly, no.
They haven't seen, I don't think they've seen this film
Yeah,
yet.
I think we're under their radar.
No, I
for
mean,
now.
yeah.
They're insane, these people, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't write that no animals were harmed. I mean, obviously animals were harmed.
Right.
I think the snake eating, that was like at the, like a reptile
show, yeah.
show, so, you know, that's them just being fed.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like, you know, the documentary, so maybe you get a slightly different pass on documenting stuff that's already happening versus like we didn't buy the snake and the mouse and put them together. We were just documenting it. And, you know, if it's a fictional thing and we wanted it as an artistic statement, I think maybe PETA would be more upset, but we just were happenstance to it. At least that's what I would say if they were not
No rats were killed in the making of this film.
Right.
An arrow through its head.
Well, maybe that's one that we are culpable for. But that was a wild rat, so it had it coming.
I will say, though, again, to go to the Baltimore screenings, we had a lot of questions to the rat rub-out team from the local community asking about, you know, like little specific questions about rats in their city.
Their neighborhood, yeah.
Yeah, their neighborhood. And apparently, I guess they slowed down garbage collection to like once a week as opposed to twice a week for financial reasons. And they asked the rub-out team whether that made the rat population increase, and they're like, yes, definitely. And it was
And
pretty
this is
funny.
like film Q&A.
Yeah, it was a film
Yeah,
Q&A,
yeah.
basically turned into a town hall about like what to do about the
Yeah,
rats.
yeah.
And I guess they had introduced some garbage cans that were supposed to prevent the rats from getting in, and the rub-out team didn't want to comment on whether they were effective or not. It was pretty funny.
Yeah.
Have you ever had a pet rat?
I have, yeah. I had 2 pet rats growing up.
Well, that's neat.
Yeah.
Also, Dan Deacon, fun fact, who did
Oh,
the
yeah.
score, both his parents were exterminators. And so when he met Theo, and Theo's like, I did a movie about rats, he was like, I know all about it. And so I think that was the kind of a kickoff for them.
Yeah.
Why did you choose Baltimore?
Theo's from Annapolis, and then I think after college settled in Baltimore. Baltimore has like just a really amazing arts community, partially because I guess it's it's affordable and there's just art school there. It's like there's this right alchemy of things, and so I think he just thought it was a really exciting place to be, and that people are really about the work and very passionate about it, and he found his people there, and I think every single person outside of the 2 of us who worked on this film is from Baltimore. I think it was important to him, and so it's just like for Baltimore by Baltimore in a way. But
and for us as producers, having gone there a few times, I mean, we met incredible filmmakers there. There's like such a great
and
community.
music a lot.
Yeah.
There's a
Yeah.
huge music scene, and
I feel like there's a really great experimental animator from Baltimore named Karen Yazinski, who we've had at FIlmforum once before, and we're going to have again later this year.
Oh,
Keep
cool.
an eye out for her.
No,
She's
it's
just
really
one of these great
incredible what
thinkers.
Baltimore has incubated.
Not just John Waters.
Not just
No.
John Waters. So he is the mayor, I feel like, the unofficial mayor of Baltimore.
Yeah.
Sure. Let's talk about the people who did end up being in the film, the various portraits of people, both the fans and the exterminators.
Mhm.
And you told us some about how he found like the exterminator team
Yeah.
and so forth. That seems straightforward. How did he find the people who carefully nursed their rats, and then
Yeah.
also beyond that, like were there others who weren't included? Which were the ones who felt right, or was this everybody he felt?
I mean, I think a lot of it is a byproduct of Theo being like a one-man band, he can show up the same day with a camera and a microphone and be fairly accommodating to their schedule, or less intimidating than bringing a whole crew over. But it was really just going on forums and finding rat lovers and being persistent. And he went to the Lizard
rat pet meetup group forum in Baltimore, local, and he would get together. Actually, after the film was finished, and he screened it for all the rat lovers.
I think that was one of the first. Yeah,
and they had like a big potluck, and obviously he warned them that they would see rats die in the film, and that the first screening we ever did, it was the rat lovers and the killers sort of all on stage together. And they all respected each other, I guess, in this way.
I remember, some of the rat lovers said, I respect and appreciate what you've done. I'm not like, I don't know if there's dead rats, but they liked it.
But and I think for the Rat Robot team, I think Theo sat in with a few people, but obviously Harold had something about him that kind of made him stand out, and so he continued with him.
And I think it just streamlined the narrative to have one killer be the kind of one who brings you through. I don't know if there's really that many other people who got... Oh, there was one woman who had rats who was cut out, and it just felt like it was repeating a lot of the similar things that Conrad, the guy who lets his rats free in the living room, I felt like it was repeating that beat a little bit.
But honestly,
her rats are in it a little bit, but she's not in it.
Yeah, but
other than that, not really.
Yeah, everyone's kind of in it. That he got.
It's a very streamlined film. Theo went to upstate New York and locked himself in a room, and I think that's where the film really began to get its structure, and a lot of the Google Maps started getting incorporated.
I think his thought was, and he said this before, is he was in upstate New York, sitting with all the footage, and he's like, this movie's about maps, and I should literally drive down every street in Baltimore and film it. And then he's like, well, that's not doable, so I'll just do it through Google Maps as temp, I guess, and then realize this is the way through.
Yeah. And I think that.
And same as the rat video game that's in there.
Yeah.
It's just something he found.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Did you have another question?
One more question.
Sure.
As much as it looks so shocking to us in LA to see all this, but the two guys sitting on the chairs right on the street and angling it as if they're fishing these rats, it looks like they are so tuned to the thing that they just know that they have rats in their community.
Yeah.
It's common.
Oh, yeah.
So did you guys actually, when you were filming, were you there? What was the scenario like? Because we don't get to see much of it except that, they
we
are
weren't
so
there.
comfortable in their skin just to be there and do it. It's night and
Yeah.
nobody
You walk around, you'll see rats for sure. We weren't there for that particular for that shoot, so we can't speak exactly to what that moment was like. But rats are certainly a real phenomenon, and that you see them running around.
Is it far more worse than New York? Because New York subways are always filled with rats.
Obviously New York has a denser population of people and a lot of trash, but Baltimore's obviously doesn't have the resources to handle it as well. So, I don't know. I don't know who's worse. I don't think we looked that up, but it's really,
I just have
really bad.
I have anecdotal evidence. I don't have any hard.
And they literally, I think they had a fire. We learned this in one of the screenings, that they had a fire in Baltimore at one point, and the rats sort of split, and so there's kind of two gene pools of rats, of Norway rats. They're bigger on one part of the city than another part of the city because of this fire. So.
Is that scientifically backed up, or is that
that's what the robot guys said, and
That's
it seemed like they're bigger on this part of town.
Yeah.
But yeah,
The
it's
the
bad.
folk tale of it. Yeah.
Or the nutrients are just better in the soil.
Right.
Now, what about, were there concerns over things certain loaded imagery and race terms in the person, with the baseball bat and so forth, and which of the, I think that was part of the construction, but the different exterminators and the ways, different imagery and methodology and race are all caught up in it. Were there concerns over, whether...
Well, I think
it provoked,
the film provoked a lot of interesting conversations, especially in Baltimore, about race. And I think the guy actually, the guy, we didn't really speak about him, but the guy with the gun collection
Mm-hmm.
is, yeah, I don't know, he has these stickers that say Balt and in Charm City that has like rats on them, and he puts them all over the city. I don't know, he's just like this particular guy, and obviously him walking around alleyways with a gun or whatever that is, I mean, those other two guys couldn't have done that. That wouldn't have lasted a few minutes, you know? So
No,
there's
I mean,
obviously,
exactly.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, it really has provoked a lot of interesting conversations, specifically in Baltimore. But, you know, you make a film like this and it's playing in these international film festivals to audiences. It's, you know, there's sort of a spectacle element to it. I mean, no one in Locarno or even, you know, in Toronto or whatever, like, they just don't have the same experience, the American experience, and specifically East Coast, like, Baltimore experience. So, yeah, really the ground for those conversations was in Baltimore, and they were really interesting, you know, and they literally would turn into town halls about race. You know, we found some video on YouTube that was like kind of like a Zulu Nation type, like 99%er group in Baltimore, literally reading out exactly what happens in the film on a microphone on a street corner, basically warning people like John Hopkins did this and like they're trying to kill us, and so yeah, I mean.
But I think, like, from a construction standpoint, I think that's partly why Theo does like to create the space between the audience and the filmmaker that is open to kind of you bring a lot of yourself to this movie, and he's not necessarily trying to like directly make statements.
Yeah.
But also, like, how many people involved in making the film are African American?
I mean, besides with the composer, there's like 4 or 5 people who
Right.
made this film, so
Right.
none, I guess.
But
Yeah.
yeah, and the filming team, not necessarily.
Yeah,
those.
I
So I
mean,
mean,
it's-
obviously
I mean,
their
it's really-
interactions
Yeah,
can be fraught in
Yeah.
different ways.
yeah, and honestly, I mean, I think Theo learned a lot in that, and took a lot of those questions head on, and throughout the release of the film,
Yeah.
and sparked those conversations with his friends and with the people in the community in Baltimore, which he lives with.
Right.
And-
And I think that's probably why it was so important to him that it was a Baltimore, you know, that everybody pretty much who worked on it was Baltimore, that they'd have some sort of context for this, and they weren't trying to create something that felt exploitative or sensational or anything, you know, that is trying to be, everybody who's involved in it has some sort of responsibility to the city or to, the film.
Yeah, and the way the film was framed was never about, the sensation around those things. It was really about the filmmaking and the power of it, and not, again, there's a lot of films coming out of Baltimore since the uprisings and trying to, sensationalize.
Even before those.
Yeah, even before those, and so we didn't want to get pigeonholed as another Baltimore film that is, people swooping in and capitalizing on the plight.
Any more questions, please?
I really like the ending, the fireworks and the new Baltimore bit. Was that, where did that ending get invented during the process? Was that something late in editing, or did he have that in mind the whole time?
I think it was always there.
Kind of. I think there's always somewhat of a version of that. I think the drag race stuff played a bigger role
That's true.
in earlier versions of the film. There was even like a moment with, there was at this drag race show, there was like a beauty bikini contest or something, which like
Yeah.
sort of he had put in there at one point as like to kind of further this idea of spectacle. But I think that was always the intention, was to create this, because there's a really nice feeling about like, oh, we're going to start from scratch and we're going to get rid of all these problems and everything's going to be great.
Yeah.
So I think that was always there.
And I think it was more of a emotional instinct kind of where to take the film and what would feel like some sort of catharsis or ending. And then I think from there we refined it, but
Yeah,
I think it was always there.
And I think the creative conversations around it, I think literally were like, I'm like, if you end it on the catharsis, even if it's fake, people will feel good, even though they're
Right.
kind of tricked and lied to. And then
Which
you
is why
add
he
that,
had an
and
unedited
you add,
footage of a snake eating a mouse.
yeah, and then I'm like, and you add that. You sure
a
you
rat.
want to add that at
Yeah.
the end? And like, do you want to leave that there? Is that the last thing? Because if you could end on the good feeling, and he was, very
Yeah.
adamant about keeping that.
And I
in
think
sticking
I think
to
the
it.
compromise was that it went from an unedited footage of a snake eating a baby rat
like
to
5 to 10 minutes.
to a slightly edited version.
Yeah.
Snake eating a rat
With a little bit of Harold.
with Harold singing. Yeah.
Yeah, which he's like singing, but he's also burying a rat.
Oh,
like
really?
that's the sound
Yeah.
that you hear.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what he was doing, but yeah, it's good.
Yeah. But yeah, it was always there.
Yeah, I
Are you
like that.
suggesting that everybody should have a snake?
If you want to, if you can stomach them.
Yeah.
They're beautiful.
Yeah.
I just had one more question. Oh, I wanted to see if you could speak any more to the Calhoun experiments in the barn. But
Yeah, what were
I mean, not the barn really, but
Yeah.
but just to help people
rec
remember what
center?
the Calhoun experiments. But I mean, the construction of it also is that of a panopticon, which is a prison observation system, and I just thought that was really astonishing that it would be seen in that way.
Mm.
But I wanted to see if you could add anything to it. I mean, the results of it, as described in the film, are obviously so striking, and its placement in the film is so very telling. Just before the overlay of all the many maps,
You know-
I mean, it's really well constructed in
Yeah.
that way.
That's such a specific question that I feel like Theo would have the best answers for. I haven't heard of that asked, let alone an answer for it. Do you have any?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what we're doing here is sort of like
Best of hits.
best of
Theo
hits
says.
of like 2 years of Q&As
Yeah.
that we've attended.
That's a good question. I
that-
don't think I've ever had that.
I mean, we
Um,
sadly had to take that out of the
Yeah.
PBS,
the PBS version doesn't have
broadcast
that.
version, which was like heartbreaking, and so we had a lot of conversations about how amazing it is, but not really about further. I think I do recall like some Q&As where people were familiar with the research and like I think questioned. I think there's some muddiness on those results in some way, or people would bring up like, oh, if these experiments happen, like then people do this too, and he's like, this just happened with rats. People have agency. People won't, like, just because this experiment occurred this way with rats in these confined spaces doesn't mean they apply to humans.
It's not one-to-one, yeah.
It's not one-to-one. And so that's the thing to keep in mind. It's easy to point to that and be like, oh, that's the answer. But again, it's not necessarily.
But the illusion, I mean, by its editorial placement in the
Of
film,
course.
obviously that's the illusion
Yeah.
being constructed. Any other final questions, or should we wrap up here? So, we can wrap up here. I want to thank you both very
No,
much for
thank you
joining
for
us
having
this
us.
evening.